Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today is another gorgeous day here in San Diego, and I am so excited. Why? Because we are going to take a drive in the mountains with a very, very cool car. Oh wait, not that one. Ah, yeah, this one. What do we have here? This is a 2021 Toyota Supra 3.0 Premium. So that means we've got the bigger engine up front here, a nice inline 6 turbo. Oops, crashed into my trash can there. And I'm gonna take this thing for a drive and tell you guys how this car feels to drive from the perspective of somebody who owns that car. I mean, here's the thing, right? These days, sports cars are getting way more powerful and muscle cars are getting way better handling. So the line is kind of getting blurred. Let's see how that plays out with these particular cars. We're gonna hop in the Supra, go for that drive, and we're gonna talk about it. One of my favorite features of the Supra is the fact that it is a hatchback. So if I take my drone case here, I can just shove it into this black hole here and it's in the trunk. Is that a GT86 dashboard? I mean, it looks like a Boxster engine, doesn't it? And while we're on our way to the mountains, let's talk about some specs. Just get it out of the way before we talk about how this car feels. So this car is rated at 382 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque, which is 47 more horsepower than the 2020 model. And this car gets to 60 miles an hour in a very muscle car like 3.8 seconds. Oh, there goes the traction. Ooh, that back end is squirrely. This car is nuts, dude. This car comes with Pilot Super Sports. They are 275 rears, 255 fronts. Those 275 tires in the back cannot manage this level of torque. It's crazy. I think it's super cool that Toyota is equipping these Supras with PSSs from the factory because, you know, Pilot Super Sports are awesome tires. As an enthusiast, I want Michelin to keep making them. All right, coming off the freeway now, a little bit calmer. Oh, hey, another Supra, a red one. There he goes. Oh, we got up to the speed limit very quickly. In the immortal words of Jeremy Clarkson, power! We're in the hills now, and yes, here we go. Man, first thing I'll say is that the steering is just incredible. I don't think I've ever driven a front-engined car that feels this nice in the, steering department. It's so precise, and more importantly, I think, is the fact that it's so intuitive, meaning it's almost like you lean into the steering wheel and then the car goes. It's less of like this artificial turning motion. It's more of like, it's almost like you're skiing, right? You lean into the turn, into the curve, and the car goes where you want it to go. That's how good this thing feels. There are two suspension modes on this car. There's normal and there's sport. And currently I have it in the sport setting because we are sort of driving sportily, or as sportily as we can, with a a late 90s Camry right in front of us. Ooh, they are going left and we are going right, so we should be good. All right, here we go. All right, so we are in sport mode on the suspension and normal for everything else. That's the way I like it. And let's talk about that suspension. In the curves, you do feel some body lean. It's not bad. And on the street, even on mountain roads like this, I think it works just fine. On the track, I can imagine this being a little too soft because, I mean, especially if you throw on some ultra sticky tires and you're just pulling maximum G's, it's gonna feel a little out of sorts. I can absolutely see that being the case. Actually, one thing I really enjoy about the Supra is that it doesn't have all the different drive modes that BMWs typically have. This one just has normal and sport. It's super simple. I like that. I think it's a little bit silly to have something like an Eco Pro mode in a car like a Z4. So I'm glad that Toyota / BMW omitted that from this version of the Z4 / Supra. So what I'm saying is that the driving experience is really, really good, and you don't have to like fiddle around with the electronics and kind of configure all these little things to make it that way. It just is good. Brakes in typical BMW fashion are awesome. The amount amount of pedal effort is just right. It's super linear. There's a lot of stopping power, so I'm really happy with these brakes. They are way better than the Camaro's brakes. One drawback of the Supra is that there's this sort of mismatch between the front and the back end that you can really feel. So the front end is super tied down, incredibly precise. It does exactly what you want it to do. Meanwhile, the back is really good up to about 8/10. Beyond 8/10, you start to get some of that wayward behavior. If you're driving at 9/10 or 10/10, say on the track or in an autocross, you really have to kind of manage that rear end all the time. And that to me, that spoils the fun a little bit. By contrast, the Camaro, weirdly enough, the Camaro has a much more balanced front-rear behavior profile. I don't know how to describe it, but the front and the rear behave much more in sync with each other. Now that we've been driving this car around for quite a while, let's sum up how this car differs from the Camaro. And let's start with how this car beats out the Camaro. And there are a lot of ways. I mean, this is a much more expensive car. It's around mid-50s MSRP, whereas the Camaro is kind of like the mid-30s MSRP. The interior space is much nicer than the Camaro's interior space. I don't love this design because it looks a little bit drab to me, but the Camaro's interior is worse. We'll just put it that way. There's a lot of scratchy plastic in that car. This car at least has like pretty premium materials. So this interior, hands down, way better than the Camaro. Visibility out of this cabin is also a lot better. The side mirrors are a bit bigger, but they don't tend to block critical blind spots. In terms of the driving experience, the torque in this powertrain is all about that torque. It's nuts. The front end of this car is amazing. It is way nicer, way more tied down, way more precise and intuitive than the Camaro's front end. The brakes are much better. I would still not quite trust these brakes for the track. I think that it still needs to be upgraded somehow to deal with track abuse. But on the street, the Camaro really kind of feels under-braked. This car feels just right. It feels really, really good. And now let's talk about where the Supra sort of falls short of the Camaro. And oh my goodness, before we do that, these trees are insane. Those are fall colors. I think you can kind of see it in the video. Fall is here, boys and girls. Anyway, back to where the Supra falls short of the Camaro. I think the biggest way has got to be the powertrain and the charisma of the powertrain. Now, like I said, this car has a much meatier torque curve, but the Camaro powertrain wins hands down, in my opinion, on charisma. I just love how raw it sounds. And how responsive and linear that powertrain is. The second way that the Camaro wins, in my opinion, is the fact that the handling in that car is more balanced. The third way that the Camaro beats out the Supra is the fact that you do have rear seats, and the rear seats fold down. The Camaro is a bit more practical than the Supra. All right, I'm gonna pull over here. Alright guys, so after driving around the Supra all day yesterday, what do I think of it? Honestly, what it does best is dance through those mountains. Would I buy the Supra? Yeah, I think I would, but probably not new. To me, in the mid 50s, it's a little expensive, but if this thing comes down into like the low 40s, maybe even upper 30s in a couple of years, once the car market has settled down a little bit, I would seriously consider getting one once I'm done with this Camaro. I mean, it would be a pretty cool upgrade. Thank you guys so much for joining me in this video until the end. I hope you guys had fun watching this video. I certainly had a lot of fun driving this car through the mountains and got to pop my super cherry, and you guys got to witness that. Anyway, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed yet, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, would you look at that? There's the Supra and its twin.